The air in the conference room was thick with the smell of stale coffee and forced enthusiasm. It was Tuesday morning, the weekly strategy meeting, and everyone was trying to look engaged as Mark, our senior marketing director, droned on about optimizing our existing social media campaigns. I'd been waiting for my slot on the agenda, clutching the presentation deck I'd stayed up late perfecting. My turn came, and I clicked to my first slide. I've been analyzing market trends and competitor activity, I began, my voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in my stomach. I believe we need to pivot our digital strategy to focus on interactive content and community building, particularly on emerging platforms like TikTok and Discord. Our current approach is static and we're missing a key demographic. I clicked to the next slide, the one I was particularly proud of. It showed a projection of potential ROI based on a phased implementation of my proposed strategy with specific metrics for engagement and conversion. It was bold, it was data-driven, and it represented a significant departure from our current, more traditional methods. This slide, I said, tapping the screen with a laser pointer, shows that by reallocating just 15% of our current digital budget, we could see a potential engagement increase of 40% within 6 months, leading to a projected 10% increase in lead generation by the end of the fiscal year. I looked around the table, expecting questions, maybe some pushback, but hopefully some interest. Instead, I saw Mark lean back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. Then, he let out a short, sharp laugh, a dismissive, condescending sound that cut through the quiet room. TikTok and Discord, Emily? He chuckled, shaking his head slightly. Are we trying to sell enterprise software or launch a gaming channel? That's creative, I'll give you that. But let's stick to what works, shall we? LinkedIn, industry blogs, maybe a sponsored post on Facebook if we're feeling adventurous. Let's not get distracted by fads. The laughter died down, but the embarrassment lingered. My colleagues avoided my gaze, some looking sympathetic, others just uncomfortable. My carefully researched, strategically sound proposal had been reduced to a punchline about fads, but the data shows I started. The data shows we need to focus on proven channels, Emily, Mark interrupted, his tone firm, signaling the discussion was over. Let's move on. Sarah, you had an update on the email marketing campaign? I sat back down, my face hot, the vibrant colors of my rejected strategy slide still burning on the screen behind me. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of forced professionalism. I wanted to disappear, to rewind the last 10 minutes and erase the sound of his laugh. That evening, I didn't go straight home. I walked aimlessly through the city streets, the cool April air doing little to calm the turmoil in my head. It wasn't just the rejection. It was the public humiliation, the casual dismissal of my expertise. I had put in months of work, seen a gap in our strategy, and developed a solution, only to be laughed at by a man whose own digital knowledge seemed stuck in 2010. Back in my small apartment overlooking a noisy intersection, I opened my laptop. I stared at the strategy slide Mark had mocked. The numbers were solid. The logic was sound. It wasn't a fad. It was the future of digital engagement for our target audience. The problem wasn't the strategy. The problem was Mark. That night, I updated my resume. I polished my LinkedIn profile. I started searching for job openings, specifically targeting companies known for innovation in their marketing departments, including our direct competitors. I knew my worth, even if my current boss didn't. A few weeks later, I saw a listing for a senior marketing manager position at Sterling Corp, one of our main competitors. Sterling had a reputation for being forward-thinking and aggressive in their market approach. It felt like a long shot, but I applied anyway, attaching my resume and a cover letter that hinted at my innovative ideas for digital engagement. To my surprise, I got a call for an interview. The initial phone screening went well, focusing on my experience with data analysis and strategic planning. They invited me in for a second-round interview with the VP of Marketing, a woman named Brenda Sterling, part of the founding family, known for her sharp mind and no-nonsense attitude. Preparing for that interview, I debated whether to include the fad slide. Part of me wanted to hide it to avoid another potential dismissal, but another part, the part that was tired of being underestimated, knew that this slide represented my best strategic thinking. It was a risk, but I decided to include it as part of a broader presentation on my vision for their digital future. The interview with Brenda Sterling was intense but invigorating. She asked challenging questions, pushed back on some of my assumptions, but she listened, really listened. When I got to the slide about pivoting to interactive content and emerging platforms, explaining the rationale and the projected ROI, I braced myself for a reaction. Brenda didn't laugh. She leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the screen. "Interesting," she said, not with sarcasm but genuine curiosity. "Tell me more about your projections for Discord. Most companies in our space aren't even looking there yet." I explained my reasoning, the demographic data, the potential for building a loyal community around our product. I talked about engagement rates, user behavior, and the competitive advantage of being an early adopter. I showed her the numbers, the analysis, the detailed plan. She asked probing questions, not to trip me up, but to understand the nuances. She challenged the cost projections, asked about potential risks, and wanted to know how I would measure success beyond just engagement metrics. We spent nearly 15 minutes just on that one slide and the strategy it represented. "This is compelling, Emily," Brenda said finally, sitting back in her chair. "It's not what we're currently doing, but I can see the potential. It's bold, and it's backed by solid analysis." The rest of the interview covered other aspects of marketing, but the conversation kept circling back to the digital strategy and that specific slide. As I left her office, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. I hadn't been laughed at. I had been taken seriously. A few days later, I received a call from Sterling Corp's HR department. They were offering me the senior marketing manager position. The salary was a significant increase, the benefits were excellent, and the job description included leading their digital strategy initiatives. "Brenda was particularly impressed with your presentation on digital engagement," the HR representative said. "She mentioned your insights into emerging platforms and the potential ROI you demonstrated on one specific slide were exactly the kind of forward thinking we're looking for." That same slide, the one Mark had laughed at, it hadn't been a fad. It had been my ticket to a better opportunity. Resigning was bittersweet. I drafted my resignation letter, giving the standard 2 weeks' notice. When I handed it to Mark, he seemed surprised, though he maintained his usual cool exterior. "Leaving us, Emily? Where are you headed?" "I've accepted a senior marketing manager position at Sterling Corp," I said, keeping my tone professional and neutral. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "Sterling, our competitor." "Sterling? Really? Well, good luck with that." He didn't ask why I was leaving, didn't express regret, just a brief, awkward farewell. The real satisfaction came a few days later. The company-wide announcement about my departure went out, mentioning my new role at Sterling. Later that afternoon, I saw Mark walking past my desk, his jaw a little tighter than usual. He glanced at me, then quickly looked away. The office grapevine was fast. Everyone knew where I was going and likely remembered that meeting where he dismissed my ideas. My first few months at Sterling Corp were challenging but rewarding. I was given the autonomy to implement the digital strategy I'd proposed, starting with the initiatives outlined on that key slide. My team was enthusiastic, Brenda Sterling was supportive, and the results started coming in faster than even I had projected. We launched targeted campaigns on TikTok, building a genuine community around our brand. We used Discord servers for direct customer feedback and engagement, creating a loyal user base. The engagement metrics soared, and the lead generation numbers followed. 6 months into my new role, I was presenting our Q3 results to the Sterling executive team. I stood at the front of the room, confident, prepared, and in control. I clicked to a slide showing the dramatic increase in digital engagement and lead generation, directly attributing it to the new strategy implemented on emerging platforms. Brenda Sterling smiled from the head of the table. Emily's initiative in pivoting our digital strategy has been a game changer, she said to the room. Her vision, backed by solid data and execution, has given us a significant competitive edge. As I looked at that slide, the same one Mark had laughed at, I felt a profound sense of vindication. It wasn't just about proving him wrong. It was about proving to myself that my ideas had value, that my strategic thinking was sound, and that sometimes the only way to get ahead is to take your best work elsewhere when it's not appreciated where you are. I heard through the grapevine that my old company was struggling to connect with younger demographics and that Mark was under pressure to modernize his department. They were apparently now exploring options on platforms they'd previously dismissed as fads. Sitting in my spacious office at Sterling Corp with a view of the city skyline, I knew I had made the right choice. My boss had laughed at my strategy, but his competitor had seen its potential, and in the end, the results spoke louder than any dismissive chuckle ever could.